$30 million gift to the U of A's Biosphere 2.
I think this gift really does provide a measure of security for Biosphere 2 and the connection to the University of Arizona.
And inside downtown Tucson's new AC Marriott Hotel.
Marriott sees something about urban Tucson that even we don't appreciate.
This is Metro Week. Hi, I'm Vanessa Barchfield. Welcome to the show. This week, we'll check in on the work being done at Biosphere 2. We'll also talk about Tucson's tourism industry. That and much more after a look at the week's top stories from the Arizona Public Media Newsroom.
The University of Arizona basketball coach arrested on corruption charges Tuesday will likely be fired, and the university is hiring an outside law firm to investigate the case. Emmanuel Book Richardson is one of 4 coaches and 6 other people arrested by the FBI in a nationwide crackdown on alleged bribery in college sports. Richardson is charged with taking $20,000 in return for steering basketball players towards a business manager and a financial advisor. An analysis by real estate company Redfin shows the mortgage on a condominium in Tucson is comparable and sometimes cheaper than living on the University of Arizona campus. A dorm room on the U of A campus runs between $6,000 and $8,000 for the academic year. Redfin estimates the average condo mortgage at about $6,500 a year. An unmanned aerial vehicle produced by Raytheon Missile Systems in Tucson collected critical data during Hurricane Maria that was immediately used by hurricane forecasters as the storm churned off the Florida coast. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration acquired 7 of the drones days before the hurricane intensified and moved into the Caribbean. The Coyote, as it's called, can fly into a storm and make continuous readings for up to an hour. They were launched from an aircraft flying through the hurricane. For more on all of the week's top stories, visit our website.
A major gift guarantees that research at Biosphere 2 will continue for at least the next decade. We'll look at its future and back at its past. Biosphere 2 was built on a patch of desert in Oracle between 1987 and 1991. The idea was to create a mini replica of Earth, with a tiny rainforest, a desert, even an ocean, to test if humans could survive in a closed ecological system on a planet other than Earth. A Texas billionaire named Ed Bass bankrolled the $200 million project. Remember his name, you'll be hearing it again. On September 26, 1991, 4 men and 4 women sealed themselves into the building to live together. There were a few blips along the way, like early in the mission when one biospherian had to be evacuated for medical treatment and returned a few hours later with supplies from the outside world. And then there was another problem.
It turned out that we were losing oxygen, quite a lot of oxygen.
And at the same time, carbon dioxide was rising.
Everybody outside thought we were dying. I mean, the media was making it sound like we were dying, and I had to call up my mother every other day saying, "No, Mom, it's fine, we're not dead, we're fine."
In 1993, 2 years after they entered, the team left Biosphere 2. A second mission in 1994 was more short-lived. It was during that time that Ed Bass brought on Steve Bannon to run the site. We know him more recently as a former advisor to the President of the United States. Management of Biosphere 2 was transferred to Columbia University the next year, which operated it as a research site and branch campus. Columbia departed in 2003. When they left, there were several different plans for the sites, like one to build houses and a resort on the campus, which never panned out.
And then the University of Arizona got involved in 2007, and we were interested in doing research here that we couldn't do anywhere else.
At the time, the original financial backer, Ed Bass, gifted the U of A $30 million to support their work.
And then in 2011, he actually gifted the facility to the University of Arizona. And so this recent gift of $30 million that we'll use over the next decade or so is the 3rd major gift to the University of Arizona in the past 10 or 11 years.
Bass's latest contribution is an important one.
I think this gift really does provide a measure of security for Biosphere 2 and the connection to the University of Arizona. The first 10 years was almost like a trial period for the university and for Ed Bass, and I think the research that we've been able to do is large scale with a level of control that you can't do anywhere else.
And today, that research isn't focused on sustaining human life on a different planet, but improving conditions on our own Earth, even as the climate changes.
My name is Katie Morgan. I work out here as Program Coordinator for Marine Science Education and Outreach.
Katie's involved in a lot of projects in Biosphere 2, including one about coral.
This is the skeleton of a coral. So this is the calcium carbonate shell of a coral. And you can see in here that these little pores are where actually the animal lives. Corals are essentially important to the ocean. They're important for many reasons. I mean, they're breeding grounds for tons of species of fish and invertebrates.
And they're shrinking.
We're seeing corals' health decrease on a rapid rate. We've seen about a 30% loss in biodiversity in the Great Barrier Reef in the last year. And that's really due to the increase of temperature. So corals are in trouble, and we need to start doing something about it. And there's researchers all over the world that are starting to do something about it.
Some of that work is happening here at Biosphere 2. In a few weeks, scientists from a number of countries will convene here in Oracle to talk about supercorals.
Supercorals are actually taking corals that are more tolerant to the increased temperatures and breeding them together. So it's selective breeding that makes those corals stronger. So it's a more tolerant coral that comes out of it that are more adapted to those higher temperatures. So they're doing that in the lab already in Hawaii, Australia, Florida, all over the world, looking at how those corals can be selectively bred. And they want to look at it in our Biosphere 2 ocean to see how we can manipulate temperature, because in this ocean we can manipulate everything from temperature to wave motion to nutrient levels. So it's a really unique facility, and it's that intersection between, before you go out and put these selectively bred corals into the ocean, you kind of have to try it in this unique environment.
Kevin Bonine says the coral experiment is the latest in a long legacy of Earth systems research.
The focus has been on how do water and energy and other parts of Earth systems cycle on a big scale, and how do things like soil change over time. And all of those things are the fundamentals for food, energy, and water, all of which contribute to our quality of life and our health.
One of the biggest projects here is done on the Landscape Evolution Observatory,
or LEO for short. And this is 3 large hill slopes, each of which has about 1,800 sensors buried in a meter-deep crushed volcanic rock. And the idea is to better understand how soil changes over time as it evolves from crushed rock, and how does water move through that system. And both of these approaches, understanding water, understanding soil evolution, these are things that will help us understand the availability of resources for people, especially in an area like the arid southwestern climate.
Biosphere 2's budget is made up of Ed Bass's gifts, but that's not all. 100,000 paid visitors come through each year. The U of A contributes money, and a lot of the research is funded by federal grants from the National Science Foundation. As the federal government's stance on climate change has shifted in the Trump administration, have those grants been harder to get?
So far, we haven't seen too much of an impact. Obviously, it's early in this current administration, but our scientists are top in the world at what they do. And some of the questions they ask are relevant to climate change issues, but they're not focused solely on climate change.
And so Kevin Bonine is feeling pretty good about Biosphere 2's future. And he's hoping the work here not only solves problems that'll be facing humans in the coming years, but also that it inspires future generations of scientists and researchers.
I think Biosphere 2 is unique in sort of its bold vision for doing science. And my job is to help think about how you link that as well to education, and specifically STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. Unfortunately, Arizona does not rank as high as some other states with respect to education outcomes, and we really hope that this facility can help inspire students to stick with science and math and do better in those fields, because it contributes to their long-term career success, and it contributes to local communities and Southern Arizona success as well.
From Oracle to downtown Tucson, where the AC Marriott opened recently. We went for a visit, and while there, sat down with Rio Nuevo chairman Fletcher McCusker and with Nick Fox, who works for the company that manages the hotel.
Let me just kind of give you a little bit of a backstory. So the AC brand actually started in Spain, just as a set of boutique hotels. Marriott saw them and saw that they were doing a fantastic job, and thought that it could really work in the U.S. in densely urban areas. So Marriott partnered with them and brought them to the U.S. And actually, this AC is one of the first to open in the U.S. with multiple coming throughout the year.
Rio Nuevo's Fletcher McCusker says even he was surprised when Marriott announced they'd be coming to downtown Tucson.
So Marriott sees something about urban Tucson that even we don't appreciate.
Is this meant to be a place for Tucsonans to come to as well, or is it really sort of the hub for tourism in Tucson?
I think the lobby's designed to be a place to hang out. It's the entire lobby is also the bar and food scene. So if you've been here even as early as a week ago, you'll see a lot of locals at the bar mingling with people from out of town. It's designed for a younger traveler. The pool scene, if you haven't been up to the pool, really quite spectacular. It's very urban and very walkable. So it's designed for people who are going to stay downtown and don't need a car.
This is the first hotel to open in downtown Tucson since the 1970s, I believe. Why haven't we seen a hotel open in this area since then?
Well, downtown Tucson was a ghost town from 1975 through literally 2010. And almost everything that was down here abandoned downtown for a suburban environment. The department stores that were here moved out to the malls. The storefronts and retail moved out someplace else. The restaurants, for the most part, went out of business. The Santa Rita Hotel was literally boarded up. And ultimately, the Hotel Arizona boarded up. So there's been no hotel properties in downtown. And no one really interested in downtown until it began to thrive. And two things have changed downtown Tucson since probably 2012, music and food. We're now one of the top 7 cities in the U.S. ranked for music and entertainment. And of course, now we're the city of gastronomy. So those two things, I think, attracted a whole new breed of people to our downtown. It's now become a destination. And then you saw the hotels come in after that. And you're now seeing the residential development that follows all of that.
And there are early stage plans for a number of other hotels in downtown. Can you give me a rundown of what those projects are and what stages they're in?
We've all approved the Moxie, which is just 2 blocks north of us here. That's another Marriott property, small hotel designed again for the millennial traveler. We've approved a new hotel at the TCC. It'll be the first convention center hotel immediately adjacent to the convention center arena. And we just recently approved reopening the Hotel Arizona. So you've got 3 new hotels, counting this one, and 1 renovated hotel in the neighborhood total of about 800 beds.
And when do you expect those other hotels to start reopening or opening?
All in the next year to year and a half.
So from really just Hotel Congress over the last few years to 5 hotels in a pretty short time span, is the demand there to really justify that much expansion of the hotel scene in downtown?
We're going to find out. It's very speculative. There's nothing really that supports this other than we are a convention center town. And if you look at other convention centers, Albuquerque, El Paso, towns that we compete with, there's always some convention hotel business in and around the convention center. So we've lost all that. But this is far enough away for the convention center that it's more of a destination hotel. And I think the Hotel Congress did kind of set the standard, but it's only 24 rooms. So, these 2 will be 250 rooms, all on the east end of town. This is where the entertainment zone really is. So I think you'll see people come, stay here, go to a concert, go to dinner, stay overnight, or maybe spend the weekend.
Nick Cox's company that runs this hotel is also behind the forthcoming Moxie Hotel. But the other projects in the works are being developed by other companies.
Some might see it as competition, but we just see it as additional development of downtown Tucson. It's more pieces to the puzzle that's needed to really add interest in what's going on downtown. We have a fantastic set of restaurants. We have a lot to offer, so more smart development, the better.
He says there is one part that's still missing.
The current status of retail in downtown, it could be better. There's a lot of opportunity for growth. Like I said, with the restaurants and all the other components, that's the only real piece that's missing is retail downtown. On that hotel site, actually, we have about 4,800 square feet of retail space. We currently have 1 tenant that will be moving in the first quarter of 2018, which will be a day spa, which is very exciting and it is really needed in downtown Tucson.
He says he does think soon people will think of downtown as a place to go shopping as well.
I think that's the ultimate goal, is downtown to be not just some place where someone's going to come visit from out of town, but actually a local center meeting space for shopping, for entertainment. We really want to have that downtown feeling, just like in retail experience, just like other cities throughout the U.S., such as ours, like in Austin or Portland. It'd be really cool.
And if that happens, most likely it'll be because Rio Nuevo's played a big role.
We're what's called a tax increment financing district. So we receive 50% of the state tax. Anytime you go to the malls on Broadway or any of the stores on Broadway or any of the stores, restaurants downtown, we get 50% of that sales tax. And our mission is to reinvest that in the downtown area to create new business and specifically new sales tax. So we're investing a lot in restaurant and retail and hotels, the kind of things that produce a lot of retail tax. And we're investing in corporate headquarters that bring people downtown with disposable income. We also own the convention center, so we remodeled that. It's doing quite well now. It was pretty obsolete a few years ago. So mostly we're investing in activity that creates activity.
So how are things going? Is Rio Nuevo so far recouping its investments in these projects?
10 times our investment. We're audited by the state's Auditor General. They released that in December. We're pleased to say that our current return on investment is about 10 times what we invest. And you see it all around you, especially Thursday, Friday, Saturday night downtown. The restaurants are packed. You know, the Rialto's doing better than it's ever done. The Fox Theater is doing better than it's ever done. The Arena now is doing better than it's ever done. We now know from our own economic analysis that anytime you or anybody else comes downtown, you'll spend $30. So the more foot traffic we can create, the more sales tax we create, which we can reinvest then in downtown.
I want to pose a question to you that I pose to everyone who is working in downtown Tucson. How do you think the area will look in 10 years? How different will it be in 10 years?
We're going to be another version of Austin, Texas. It's going to be about music, and you don't necessarily need a plan. You can be sitting around going, let's go downtown. And ultimately, I think that's going to be our banner. Let's go downtown.
Now we'll zoom way out. The local tourism office, Visit Tucson, says in the last year, it pumped almost $250 million into the area's economy. Visit Tucson's Dan Gibson joined me in our studios to talk about how they make that calculation.
So we want to make a distinction between what the sort of overall impact of tourism is, and for Tucson and Southern Arizona, it's about a $2.2 billion industry. But we want to talk about things that we had a direct hand in one way or another. So those are our marketing efforts that you can see a direct line to a booking. It's our PR efforts, you know, the things we do to get media attention in New York, Chicago, places like that. It's also meetings. Meetings are a big part of what we do. So we travel to meet meeting planners and we bring them here and try to show them Tucson. So there's some other things, film, Mexico marketing, things like that. But there's sort of a variety of things but it's things that we had a hand that we touched. So otherwise, we don't want to take credit for the entire tourism industry. There's probably a big part of that we have an influence on, but it's not. We don't want to say, oh, it's all us. All the $2.2 billion, all us.
Let's talk about first the $2.2 billion. How does that compare to previous years, and particularly sort of pre-recession years?
So I mean, the recession was really tough on tourism, not just in Southern Arizona, but everywhere, because people, obviously when the money is tighter, they think about, the choices they make. So the tourism business in general has been good, but for Southern Arizona, it took a little bit longer to get out of the drag. I think to some extent people were going places they hadn't been in a while or they were familiar with sort of big market ideas like Florida, Disneyland, things like that. But so that number has been continually rising. So the upside is that for Tucson and Southern Arizona, we've had really strong, the last 2 years have been exceptionally strong.
And do you have any explanation for why that's been? I mean, other than sort of the economic pickup?
I mean, we're doing an excellent job. I mean, that's what it is. I think it's partially that, but Tucson is having a little bit of a moment. I mean, the UNESCO City of Gastronomy designation made a big difference, got a lot of attention for Tucson and places like that. But also we push the idea, we try to be strategic with what we're doing. So I mean, we've been getting in front of the type of people more often that want to come to Tucson. And the thing I've noticed, this is mostly allegorical, but it's like, 5 years ago, people were saying, oh, I don't know anything about Tucson. Tell me, where to begin. And 2 years ago, people were saying, oh, my friend just came and I've heard really good things. Now people are saying, oh, I'm making plans to come. So there's a little bit of an arc of it, is that the momentum is going the right direction.
And of course, a big part of coming to Tucson is actually getting here. The city lost its direct flight to JFK recently, and also its connection to Mexico in the last few months, both of them. How much is the sort of lack of direct flights in and out of TIA dragging down the tourism industry here?
It can be a challenge. I mean, the interesting thing is, on the other hand, we gained new direct flights to Minneapolis, which we had some before, but if we increased the number of, it's a seasonal thing, but it's flights, multiple flights every day. The San Jose flight has come online. So it's a weird thing. The airline business is a difficult thing to predict. You can only control what you control about it. You know, it's interesting, New York was one of our biggest markets before the flight. It'll continue to be one of our biggest markets after the flight. Obviously, you would hope to make it super easy for people to get here, but with the number of one-stop destinations, I mean, it's not especially difficult to get here from New York and from some of those other cities. We tend to focus on the ones that have the direct flights, the 18 destinations, but still New York isn't really off the table. We hope to create the demand, you know, and that the airlines catch up, but you work with the hand that you're dealt.
A few years ago, Visit Tucson launched an aggressive marketing campaign in New York during a really harsh winter. Mm-hmm. Are you guys still working on those sorts of campaigns, and how effective are they?
You know, you look at those things, we're doing something all the time. I mean, even in the summer, you think that like we're probably taking a break, but we're still marketing to Phoenix, which we do. Tucson does really well in the summer. It's cooler, it's cheaper, things like that. But in Chicago, New York, cities like that, especially those cold weather markets, we really are pushing hard. You know, when the temperatures drop, we're on weather sites, so that if you go to weather.com, you know, you'll see an ad coming up on the side. That was part of our campaign last year. We're also trying to, you know, we're always trying to find new ways to do things. We're doing more social campaigns, more digital campaigns, things with influencers. We don't have the same budget that a lot of the other organizations do. You look at things in our competitive set, like a Palm Springs or a Phoenix, and they have a lot more money in their marketing budgets and their DMO budgets in general. But what we do is try to be innovative, push the conversation forward, and it is working. I mean, you look at more people are coming and they're paying more for their rooms, and that's a positive thing all the way around.
What do you define as tourism? I mean, Tucson obviously has so many winter visitors who are coming and staying for, you know, 3, 4, 5 months. Do you count those as sort of tourists to Tucson?
There's some weird things, right? Because they're even to the point, like the opposite of that is a day trip. Somebody might come from Phoenix, be here for the day and go back. We're not opposed to those things. We don't count them really for the purpose of what we do. Visit Tucson's funding comes from hotel tax revenues, so those are the most immediate thing we look at. There's, you know, if you've stayed in a local hotel or you stay in a hotel anyway, you see a little services tax or a room tax. You know, a part of that money comes to Visit Tucson. So that's the thing we're mostly looking at. We're trying to get, as the way we usually say it, it's like heads in beds. You know, we're trying to get people to put their head on a pillow in a Tucson hotel or Pima County hotel.
And what do you see as the sort of next frontier for tourism in Tucson? Is there an area that, if you were an investor, you would be investing in now?
That's interesting. In a way, it's. I hope that people invest in Tucson by all means. I think what we're going to keep talking about lately is the outdoors. I mean, just the opportunities that happen in Tucson. You try to think in tourism of things that nobody else has, and obviously the 5 mountain ranges surrounding Tucson, just the hiking, the biking, the things like that. That's the place that we're sort of emphasizing in the next year. Obviously, we're still talking about food just because the UNESCO thing has been such a great success and there's still so many more stories to tell. But if you were wanting to start a bike tour company right now, it's an excellent time to be in that business, because I think people, they see the outdoors here and they fall in love with it. And I think that's the thing that Tucsonans know immediately, right? For all the sunset shots and saguaro cacti against a mountain range. It's incredibly beautiful here and the opportunities are seemingly endless.
The Jewish History Museum and the Mexican Consulate in Tucson have partnered to celebrate their shared cultural roots and the cultural roots they don't share. I sat down this week with Museum Director Brian Davis and with Deputy Consul Enrique Gomez to talk about how this partnership came to be.
Well, if you allow me.
Sure, please.
Thank you. First of all, Brian and I had been discussing about doing a cultural event together between the Consulate of Mexico and the Jewish Museum, and we'd been exploring several ideas for a few months. Then we realized there was this band from Mexico City called Klezmerson, which blends actually Jewish music from Eastern Europe, klezmer music, with Mexican rhythms and with rock and more modern sounds. And their music is kind of happy, festive, nice, easygoing, and we just realized that it was the perfect band to show a cultural event that actually highlights Jewish culture, Mexican culture, and union between different ethnic or religious or communitarian groups. And then we launched it 3 years ago. It was a great success. We did something similar last year, and we plan on doing it for the 3rd year in a row.
That 3rd annual block party will take place next Saturday, October 7th, in front of the Jewish History Museum, the building we're in right now.
This building was the first synagogue built in the Arizona Territory in 1910, and it was the original home of Congregation Temple Emmanuel. They were here from 1910 until 1949. And the Jewish History Museum was established here on this campus in 2008.
And it turns out the Mexican consulate was at one point quite near this building.
The Consul of Mexico was established across the street from this building in the 1930s. So there was a 15-year period there 80 years ago where there was Jewish community happening here, the Consul of Mexico across the street, and that sort of dialogue that was established then is something that's important for us in terms of our work here at the Jewish History Museum, really trying to locate the history and ongoing presence of Jews in Southern Arizona in really a multicultural context.
For Davis, the partnership with the Mexican consulate is meant to be fun and a celebration, but it's also meant to be kind of an intellectual challenge to the community.
Just to complicate people's ideas of who the Jewish people are, to show that there's Jewish community in Mexico City, and bringing that cultural expression here is a way to really broaden people's thinking about the Jewish people around the world.
So 3 years ago, Davis and Gomez started planning.
First of all, the idea was to do a free event. We want everyone and anyone who lives in Tucson and is interested in attending the party to come and join the fun and the party and all that. But it was Brian's idea to do a street party, more than doing it at a closed place, at a theater where you may enter if there are any spaces available and all that. Even a person that is just passing by can realize there is a party and a band playing and food trucks and all that, and join it. And that's the idea, that anyone who feels like partying with us is invited.
And that's the same philosophy driving cultural programming at both the Jewish History Museum and the Mexican consulate.
We're intentionally trying to present Jews in Southern Arizona within the rich multicultural history and current realities of Southern Arizona. So while it might seem sort of counterintuitive for an ethnic museum that is a Jewish museum to represent a variety of cultures, we're intentionally taking that approach. So showing all the ways that Jews have sort of integrated into this community, what they've contributed, and the ways they've worked together with the broader community to strengthen the city.
Besides, at the Consulate of Mexico, we have an art gallery that displays art exhibits on a permanent basis. We try to change them every 2 or 3 months. And we have Mexican artists that come and show their works here, or local artists as well. For example, this year we did an exhibit that we called United by Art, in which we integrated local artists from Tucson of different origins. Jewish artists, Mormon, African American, Asian American, Mexican, and Mexican American. And we also had a space dedicated to Native Americans. And the idea was united by art as a way of speaking a common language, which is culture.
There's a lot of divisiveness globally and in this country right now. So all of these ongoing efforts to build bridges culturally are critical. They're necessary all the time. So it might seem that they're particularly important right now, but I think at every moment it's important to have dialogue and connections across cultures, across nations, ethnicities at all times. So it's part of the ongoing work here, regardless of the current political climate.
They say those community bridges they're working to build are always on display at the Stone Avenue Block Party.
Last year, I remember one thing that I was really happy of was the fact that there were different people, not only members of the Jewish community or the Mexican community here, but you could see African Americans, you could see people of Asian origin, you could see a broader variety of people from different origins attending the party, which means that anyone can have fun by coming here, watching the band, dancing to their music, enjoying something to eat, and visiting the beer garden.
Absolutely.
And probably visiting the beer garden as well.
A couple of times.
Yeah.
You can find more details about the block party on our website. Next week, we sit down with Tucson Police Chief Chris Magnus. That's our show. Thanks so much for watching.